Very nice to see you. So we'll just kind of begin with a quote by Albert Einstein. And he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. So I've been thinking about that when we face times of unrest and we're not certain what to do, such as education right now for our children, because they're in front of a screen and they're going to be doing it that way. And there's not necessarily a clear path that we know exactly is going to work. We have to turn to two things. We have to turn to chokhmah, wisdom that comes from experience, and also bitachon, trust. That we're putting our hand on the correct door to open that door to what will be the best direction to follow, which is the case of those who have for some time taken a different path, that one of homeschooling. So I thought we would begin, because it just seems too hot to light my Havdalah candle and watch it melt for the 15 minutes, that I would just start with a little Shabbos song, and then we'll go straight into meeting the Hucklebees. Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, 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 Shabbos. So sein Friede, Shabbos. Shabbos soll sein, Shabbos soll sein. Shabbos auf der ganzen Welt. May there always be a sense of peace, of Shabbos. Shalom, 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 Shalom. So sein Friede, Shalom. Shalom soll sein, Shalom soll sein. Shalom auf der ganzen Welt. May there be a sense of peace. La 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 la. 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 And so we enter the living room of the Hucklebees of Scott and Donna, kind of listening to why they made their choice about this kind of education for their family. And afterwards, we'll do Havdalah together. So thank you for being here, and let's see what happens next. You know, this beautiful couple, Mr. and Mrs. Huckleby, who have four children. Four total children, and who have made a decision years ago to homeschool them. So I have a series of questions that I'd like to ask you. And you, what were the key factors in your decision to homeschool your children?
Our oldest is 31. And then we started with a whole nother batch. So out of the second batch, the oldest is 16. And when she was little, we were trying to make the decision on what are we going to do for school. Donna had to stop working, and then we got used to living on one income. And so once Vivian was born, we're doing the math. Okay, in order for Donna to go back to work, we got to pay for daycare. We got to pay for this, find babysitters. We really didn't have a family infrastructure to support us in that. So it was either pay for it out of pocket or do it ourselves. She just stays at home. It's about the same as going to work and paying for daycare and paying for someone else to raise, spend the majority of the time with this kid. So she made the decision to stay at home. And it's a lifestyle. You have to adjust everything to live like this. So once Vivian became the school age, we learned that she had food allergies, and that was an obstacle that we had to overcome. And just to give you some background, I live directly across the street from the elementary school. So it's not like I would have to drive anywhere, drop her off.
Super convenient.
I could walk her right across the street. Mm-hmm. And I work for the school district. So I know people, I know who to talk to. I talked to the lady who is in nutrition services, and I asked her, is there any provision for special diet? What do you do for kids with food allergies? And she basically told me they'll make a note of it. They'll tell her, okay, we got this special plate over here for you, but they give the kid the plate, and it's on her what she does with it. You know, if she decides to trade it with somebody else, you know, there's really no control over that. So we weren't comfortable with that. So we decided we're gonna keep her at home. We're gonna figure this out, and that's basically how the homeschooling started.
Did you think about how am I going to do this, or it was just clear this is what you were going to do?
You know, at the time it was scary. We had no idea. You know.
Well, one of the things that we came to realize is that it wasn't really clear plan that I was going to stay home, but as I started to get better and we started researching going back to work, then I got pregnant again and had challenges and everything, and so we started to do the math and whatnot. But as we learned of her food allergies, we learned that she didn't just have one. It wasn't just wheat. It wasn't just nuts. It was a plethora of things. So it was an adventure. And we could chose to just be petrified by it or learn to work around it, because we didn't want her to go without cakes and without the fun stuff. So we learned how to pivot, and we found a lot of answers in Torah how to get around it. So we embraced it. We learned how to adjust the way we cooked and find ways to make breads and cakes and whatnot, to make cookies and stuff fun. It was a lot of trial and error for many years. But as we were just living our lives, we were at places where you just don't realize how much food is involved in events that you go to. So we are constantly educating medical professionals, nurses, just people who we felt should know the severity of food allergies. And I said, well, since we're doing all this work, and we've always been the type of people that even when my oldest was in brick and mortar in the summer times and breaks, I always bought the activity book, and she would do that through the break because I didn't want that slide. So we had been doing that with her from the beginning. We started sign language so that she could communicate with us until she got a verbiage, you know. So we've just been those types of people. And so we started to assess it. We had sent a niece across the street to the elementary school, and we're not happy. They missed the eyesight discrepancy for the child. So we just were assessing the whole thing. And then when we were volunteering at a cleanup work bee for a congregation, there was a testing going on for a charter school. And so I asked the secretary of the church, I said, what is this Visions thing? What is that about? And she said, oh, well, that's Visions in Education. It's a charter homeschool. And every year to stay compliant, because they're a public charter, they have to do the STAR testing. And so our congregation agrees to be a testing site each year for them to test the students. I was like, oh, okay. So that went to the back of my mind because she wasn't school age yet. And then a few years later, but the secretary just said, oh, my son did homeschooling for a while, and I was going through divorce, and it worked out great and everything. So I was like, okay, so that went in the back burner. And I had a hygienist who had been telling me of her homeschool journeys over the 10 years I've been going to her. And so that was some other information. And then when we started to realize, if you put your child in school, what could be the possibilities? And we just wanted to make sure that, you know, she was being taught the best possible with less than 35 kids in a class. and one teacher. So we just assessed all that, and then we made the decision to ask a few people their experiences in homeschooling. And we had a private homeschool friend, and she took me under her wing and spent an afternoon with us, showed me her curriculum, her whole closet of curriculum. She had 3 stair-step children as well, and how she did it. And she was just all encouraging. It was just amazing. Then we had a hybrid homeschooling family. She shared a little bit. And then we had a homeschooling family that we ended up going with the public charter, because I felt, since it was my first time, I wanted to make sure that I was being supervised by a legal authority without being completely out of control of the curriculum. So we went through the public charter, and so that way you follow the state guidelines. You have a teacher that follows you every 20 or so days, depending on how well you do. And you're checked off with all the required, minimums as far as shots and vision and all that kind of stuff goes. So that's what we chose, and it gave us some latitude, to have more say on what curriculum is being taught and what style of curriculum you want to choose, like Montessori, Waldorf, that kind of stuff as well.
For those that might want to know, what are the drawbacks on you or on your children, if there are? I mean, you might not have any, but I thought I would give it some air.
So there's definitely, so there's the gray line that we are always in, because school doesn't stop at a certain time. For certain people, you could school outside the box. You could school. For my first 3 years, I tried to do school according to the school bell across the street. That was complete chaos. It doesn't work when you're homeschooling stair-step children. So once my teacher was so patient, and she encouraged me so long. And then year 4, the light bulb clicked, and we did thematic teaching and realized the whole world is our classroom. And it's just been learned. So there's learning going on all the time now. So sometimes I'm guilty of not knowing when to turn it off, that kind of thing. So, but everything can be a field trip. The drawbacks are, the lines are blurred when I'm kitchen lady, when I'm nurse, when I'm doctor, when I'm mom, when I'm teacher. So that's part of it. So one of the things that helps is the co-ops, religious school, when they do community service and volunteering. All that stuff helps as far as their enrichment and growth. The co-ops have been truly a blessing, because they've learned wood shop, junior carpentry. They've gotten to work with the power tools my husband won't allow us to use here at home. Tennis, fencing. One friend does horseback riding. Another friend, her son is a pilot. He got his pilot's license before you know him. And so he got his pilot's license before his driver's license. So things like that, we are thankful that we can reach out. Even science camp, we fought to be able to have science camp, because that was one of the things I really thought was important, is to do the nature science camp each year. So 5th and 6th graders get to do it in traditional brick and mortars. And so we made sure that we found a school that did support that as well.
So right now that there are a lot of families out there who are in the traditional public school or some in private school who have distance learning, and the parents are used to having their own lives, but are used to having a system educate their children while they continue to do their life. And now it seems the walls are coming down a little bit. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas for those families that, okay, they're going to have to sit in front of the screen many hours a day.
Yeah. And all I can say is, for us, it was hard getting started. But once you get in the groove of it, it becomes normal. And so, a lot of people dealing with this situation we're in, we really don't have a choice, kind of like where we were, we really didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. You have to learn it. you have to adapt to it, because what's the alternative? You're gonna, not too many people are gonna just send their kid out there and hope they don't get sick, or there's your alternatives are not many. So I understand how the school districts are trying to come up with something on the fly.
Well, it's busy work, really. When the teacher's not there, it's busy work. So, and these were elementary school students and middle school students. So it just was not working. So there's different ways to do it. But the one thing that it's hard too, it was hard for me, but for the sake of my children, I learned how to humble myself and reach out and ask for help. Our congregation has a lot of retired professors and, teachers, and there's some folks that, aren't curmudgeons and they want to help the kids still. They're quite active, able to be active. And so I have, reached out. I've had offers. So it's still hard to accept the help, but hopefully now people will still be willing to be tutor some folks. So,
every conversation we tell someone, oh, we homeschool. And the first thing out of 99% of everyone's mouth is, well, are they getting enough social interaction, or what about their
socialization skills?
And they talk.
And I'm like, well, now, like, have you talked to my kid? They're fully capable of having a conversation with children, adults, anyone. They don't act crazy. They're not socially inept. They function quite well. They're not missing anything.
So this is the time that I can jump on just, homeschooling as an option. Just allow it to be an option. There's different ways to educate your kids, and brick and mortar work for some, and hybrid works for some, and homeschooling works for some as well. So.
Well, I want to thank you very much. For those of you who don't know this wonderful Huckabee family, you should get to know them. And there's a calm and a sense of, why you did it, why you're doing it, and the depth of how learning can be is so much expanded because you've let go of the bell. So God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you.
And so if we have the opportunity, if anyone wanting to talk with you about it, I'll direct them to you. And my love to all of you. Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye. Thank you. La 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen borei pari hagafen l'chaim. La 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim borei minei besamim. La 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei Ore ha'esh, Ore milre ha'esh. Capture some of that light if we can in our fingernails. It's so interesting how such a small space can become a holy space, but sharing this with you is what makes that happen. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, chatotenu hu yimchol, zareni v'chaspin yarbe kachol, nakochavim. Balayla Shavua Tov, 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 Shavua Tov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Let's bring on Elijah the prophet. It always brings peace. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hakiladi, Bimera Veyamenu, Yahavor Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. We invite Miriam to come. She brings a timbrel, she brings joy, she brings dancing. Miriam Hanivya, Oz Bezimbra Beyada, Miriam Tir Koditanu, Litagelet Ha'olam. So we began with that idea that imagination is more important than knowledge. And as we are contemplating education for ourselves and for our children and for our community at large, we think about that and ways that we can think outside the box a little bit. And I wish each of you a Shavua Tov, a wonderful week of health and of energy and of peace. Shavua Tov, everybody.